And now it went on really, really fast. So we're already at our last paper.
The main
Andrei,
event.
what, sorry?
I said the main event.
The main event, yes. The clue. The clue of the day is our last paper, Aura's paper on empathy and well-being. So this paper will nicely summarize some of the themes we touched upon during this presentation, day of presentations. Thank you.
Okay, so can I go on? Okay. So yeah, my paper was on empathy and well-being. It's definitely a big topic too. I mean, I could have written many pages, but I just wrote down about 5.5. So in this paper, I will discuss the connection between empathy and well-being as it applies to different areas of professional practices. Empathy and well-being are strongly connected and provide a strong support for a healthier life. Well-being is necessary in many aspects of our lives in order to achieve a healthier life. Factors that contribute to our well-being are purpose in life, self-acceptance, personal growth, autonomy, positive relationships, environmental mastery, and so forth. They can fuel the energy and motivation to live a balanced and healthy lifestyle. When something is good for a person, it increases the well-being or the state of well-being. In this paper, I'm going to discuss how empathy and well-being are connected and important to everyone's health. So well-being reflects a state of health and happiness. Morelli shows how empathy has a tremendous impact on our outcomes in life. Being empathetic can be more than just a to-do list on a daily basis and actually enrich our lives. Incorporating this attitude in our life can improve and prolong the emotional and mental health, thus contributing to a healthier life. Empathy is strongly linked to well-being because it provides a networking support for many in the community, which benefits both parties involved, the caregiver and the people in need. Engaging in positive relationships and helping others creates a healthier environment and is conducive to better outcomes for the community. Empathy is the foundation for relationships. Empathy is the action of feeling compassion for self and others. Empathy is frequently linked with altruistic motives and prosocial helping behavior and has implications for the quality of social life as well as moral significance. People who get involved in different activities within a certain community can create a more trusting attitude and therefore foster more productive relationships. For example, attending religious services can build a stronger sense of self-confidence because of the network the person feels connected with, and in return, that person can invest time and skills in relationships that can help them achieve similar results. As a result, this type of interactions create a strong network of people who can have a healthier life. So empathy and well-being are essential to a thriving environment. People who find purpose and meaning in helping others can enjoy happy lives in knowing that they are useful and needed. These people are called by Morelli central individuals because they play the central roles in a community. Central individuals substantially impact the health and well-being of their community, for example, by reducing stress and generating opportunities for other community members. Personality type is also linked to this type of relationships because extroverts seem to occupy these roles easier than other types of personalities. Some of the positive aspects of well-being is positive emotions and life satisfaction. Like Morelli demonstrated that these aspects of well-being have a positive impact on social relationships. So it becomes a circular relationship where the central individual makes the others happy, and in return, they make the central person happy too. People with positive emotions often display them by smiling and disclose positive events to others, which in turn elicits matching positive emotions in interlocutors. People who have life satisfaction also attract attention and alliance from peers. As a result, these people create positive relationships that are based on shared positive experiences and companionship. In contrast, empathy predicts responsiveness to others' needs and brings them comfort during times of stress. These relationships build trust and intimacy between individuals. Thus, these central individuals may occupy central positions within a community based on trust. In conclusion, people who exhibit positive emotions may be sought out for fun and excitement, while people who exhibit empathy may be sought out for trust and support. Decades of research suggest that well-being helps individuals build positive relationships, whereas empathy fosters and maintains close relationships in particular. Other findings were also showing that supportive relationships buffer people from stress and its deleterious effects on health, whereas weak ties help individuals gain knowledge and opportunities. The research concluded that empathic individuals help other network members through stress buffering, and that individuals high in well-being provide others with opportunities to foster positive experiences. Therefore, these central individuals have a positive impact on the mental health and well-being of their broader communities. Certain factors of well-being fostered by empathy are in environmental mastery and autonomy, which seems to increase with age. This factor positively impacts on personal growth and purpose in life, and on positive relationships with others and self-acceptance. The need to be empathetic stems from humans' ability to connect with each other and thus understanding someone else's pain. In that sense, it connects with altruism. Altruism, simply defined, is voluntary behavior that promotes the needs of another at some expense of the altruistic actor, with no expectations of external rewards. Empathy is a desired social trait in a society because it has short-term as well as long-term implications for that society. In the short term, it enables people to help others in need, and in the long term, it promotes the society's well-being and survival. Without altruism, a society is destined to go on a path of destruction and extinction. This is the reason why some civilizations disappeared and others survived. The philosophy that dominates a specific society is vital, and it helps people determine what is good for them and what is not. For instance, Christian philosophy has helped societies overcome many challenges and losses because it promotes empathy in order to maintain a stable society. The verse that states that rejoice with those who rejoice and weep with those who weep promotes just that. Without empathy, we would not see certain progress and accomplishments in the society. Krasny declares that the need for empathy may be the result of humans' evolution, which I strongly disagree with. Because when we're born, we do not possess any knowledge, and it is the caregiver's job to ensure infants are taught and acquire a certain amount of knowledge. It is proven that some philosophies are better than others, and they promote the well-being of a society while others do not. For example, again, Christianity promotes empathy, and we see a clear example of it in the story of Jonah. He was sent to a place called Nineveh to promote good and moral behavior to a group of people that was incredibly violent and destructive. They were legendary for their cruelty. Jonah went to Nineveh and shared with them the knowledge of his biblical values, and they understood how important it was for them to change their behavior, thus proving that people need others to show them empathy as well as teach them the importance and benefits of it. Another great example of empathy is the parable of the Good Samaritan from the New Testament, which is a very famous example. This is probably one of the most famous examples of empathy that has laid the foundation for charity and volunteer work throughout the world. The Good Samaritan shows mercy to the sick man when others did not even if he did not know him, nor did he expect anything in return from that situation. So the verse is, he went to him and bandaged his wounds, pouring on oil and wine. The Good Samaritan has wisdom and does what he would want someone else to do for him if he would be in a vulnerable situation. He shows empathy to help the sick man and also restores the justice in the society, thus promoting empathy and well-being in his community. So in conclusion, I would like to restate the fact that well-being and empathy are interconnected and vital for everybody's health and happiness. They are the foundation for healthy relationships and the society overall. Although people can act ethically when helping someone, it is desirable to have empathy because empathy has a greater positive impact on people. Empathy in its fullest form includes both the cognitive and affective dimensions, like Simon stated. Therefore, empathy has the ability to forge the bond between people on a cognitive and emotional level and create positive and healthy relationships. And such relationships promote and sustain a healthy society.
Thank you so much, Aura, for nicely tying together the different themes that connect empathy and ethics. Wonderful. Thank you so much. Any questions, comments, remarks?
Yeah, just real quick. I completely agree that empathy is a necessary component to fulfilling the so-called golden rule. New Testament version is something along the lines of love your neighbor as yourself, or do unto your others as you would to yourself. That empathy literally underlies that maxim, as you would to yourself. And I really like how you brought that out. Just a related comment. I actually almost wrote my paper on divine empathy. But I decided to not be too theological and idiosyncratic with it. But yeah, I also appreciate towards the end of your paper you highlighting the fact that, you know, not exclusively the Christians, but the Christians were largely responsible for bringing forth this sort of others-centered ethic into the world. And I mean, it's not like it didn't exist before, but, you know, I mean, they transformed Western civilization. And that by introducing this other-centered ethic. And yeah, I appreciate you highlighting that.
A curiosity now. How would you address Professor Brancho's view on empathy instead then? Because in your paper, empathy is considered only as a positive, while in Professor Brancho's presentation, there's this wall that empathy could constitute since in empathizing towards someone, we project towards someone something, and care then would be less effective. What would be your thought in relation to that?
I don't know if I understood correctly, but for me, I mean, when we think of empathy, that you also have to be ethical. So I'm not thinking that, oh my gosh, if you don't have empathy, you're not good enough. I mean, it's desirable to have empathy, but you have to remain ethical no matter what, because actually empathy, it can go away too. It's hard, as I said, depending on the circumstances, but we still have to be ethical. And I think, like you said, there is sometimes too much empathy that might be able to interfere with the process of helping someone, because empathy, since it's a projection, you might actually project things that are not real. So I think, yeah, there's interesting that we have to see empathy from the other point of view too. Is like how much empathy should we allow ourselves to feel and enact? Is like, because since it's a projection, we might be, you know, maybe it's too much. So that's how I say it.
Thank you. So when empathy becomes a projection, we need to keep an eye. Yeah, Francesca.
May I say just a tiny comment on my own people listening to this brilliant presentation of your students, Susie. I will make a kind of distinction between what we can count under the umbrella empathy. Because it seems to me that sometimes we exchange as mutual synonym empathy, compassion, love, attunement, feelings. There was a paper written by George Batson in which, if I'm not wrong, it was in the 90s, but I must double check the date. George Batson highlight 8 meaning of empathy. And it's interesting to see how in our ordinary language, sometimes we exchange empathy for something else. So basically we talk about compassion, we talk about faith, we talk about being ethical, we talk about being authentic. But my question is, it is really to do with empathy? Because when I think about empathy, in the back of my mind, there is a Edith Stein, the very first one phenomenologist to talk about empathy. And Edith Stein has a very strict and clear stand on this. We cannot fully understand completely the experience of the other. Empathy has its own limit. And despite the effort, despite the goodwill, despite the education, despite the knowledge, despite the good feeling and the faith, the other remain an unapproachable side of our experience. There is always this limit. When we see into the other gaze, there is always this limit, which is constitutive to our nature. So I just wonder to myself, I just question myself, when I talk about empathy, as you know, I'm a philosophical counselor. So when I have my clients in my studio, and am I really empathetic toward them or simply sympathetic? Or am I exercising my compassion or my faith or my welcoming and warming nature? Different things, which normally we put under the umbrella of empathy. And to me, on this, I'm very much with some scholars who say it's better to talk about intersubjectivity rather than empathy. Because this intersubjectivity has not only a spiritual dimension, a philosophical dimension, but also a socio-political dimension. I mean, can we really be empathetic with the immigrants? Can we really be empathetic with the perpetrator of violence? You know, I mean, it's extremely tricky to use this umbrella term empathy when perhaps using the other word intersubjectivity, which has no emotional connotation, can open, we can unpack the intersubjectivity into different layers of understanding and of reflection. And to me, as a scholar, when I address the issue of empathy, I have this, double sensation. On one hand, I'm very much into this, but on the other hand, I question myself, is this really empathy? Or are you exchanging your feelings, your projections for something else? So basically, these are questions to me because they are very complicated to be addressed.
Yeah, thank you, Francesca. This was one of the main difficulties in building our papers, actually. My students know how often I bring them back into, okay, are we moving away from empathy here? Are we talking about dignity, about compassion, about sympathy? This was one of the main problems in building the topic for this conference. Crystal, yeah, go ahead, please.
Yeah, that was actually quite difficult for me too, because I'm taking another philosophy class where this paper accounts for that class. And empathy, like the definition of it is different for everyone. So like that professor, their definition of empathy was that it can only be like relational, like two-sided. It has to go both ways. And your definition of empathy is it could be like one way. So it was very difficult and hard to like look at all the different perspectives of it, because how do you know which ones are right, which ones are wrong, and how do you make two professors happy at the same time?
To this day, I don't have a definition of empathy, by the way, just to
Reminds me of
say it aloud, because I really don't. I mean,
reminds me of Wittgenstein's
Beetle
in the Box. Like a lot of it is just a language game. And the first part of my paper was, okay, how am I going to define empathy? And I started looking at, I looked in your book, I looked at it online, I looked in my library, all these definitions of empathy. I'm like, okay, which one am I going to use? I mean, because we got, in philosophy, you always have to define your terms. You have to be clear on what you're talking about. Intersubjectivity, I like that. And I'm going to be thinking about Professor Brencio's presentation a lot, probably going back and revisiting it, because I was going to interact with your paper because it's against empathy, but then it was just too broad and I had to narrow my scope. But yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting suggestion to go into intersubjectivity. Sorry, Francesca.
No, it's okay. And when we talk about intersubjectivity, we have to start from a preliminary condition, intercorporeality. There is no intersubjectivity without intercorporeality, and this is a very Husserlian lesson. The ground zero of intersubjectivity is intercorporeality, the fact that we are one in front of the other. So the body is the point zero of our intersubjectivity. And then comes the feeling. And
I very much agree with Heidegger's.
On this, we could also say that intersubjectivity is grounded on intercorporeality, and interaffectivity comes later. Because at the very beginning, I feel with my body, I experience with my body. I can sense, I can experience the anger, the shame, the joy, the love through my body, because emotions have always an embodied nature. And then start to become second place, the thinking, the theoretical dimension of all our life. But the very first one is the intercorporeality. And to me, it makes more sense to talk about intersubjectivity if we want to unpack the umbrella terms of empathy into different layers: the social aspect, the political aspect, the religious aspect, the psychological aspect, and so on. Because it's easy to talk about empathy, but then when we have to exercise our empathy with our biggest enemy, we fail. We fail.
Amen.
All right. And so on Ben's amen, we close this day of conference. Thank you all for remaining. I know that you have a busy schedule, health problems, finals to prepare, work to attend to. So thank you so much for staying for the whole day together, and for the efforts you put into this day of conference and to these presentations. I'm very proud of the work you did. Thank you, Francesca, for bringing your point of view on this necessary conversation. And
my pleasure, and thank you very much for organizing the conference. And if I may add, many congratulations to your students. All the paper I've heard were brilliant, really brilliant. Congratulations, guys. Really, you did an amazing job. Really.
Thank you.